Good evening and welcome to Lakeshore Public Television's live coverage of the 2014 State of the State speech. I'm Kristen Estes. Governor Mike Pence, the 50th governor of the state of Indiana, will be giving the State of the State speech in the House chambers to a joint session of the Indiana General Assembly in Indianapolis in just a few minutes. Afterwards, we hope you'll stay with us for a roundtable discussion hosted by the Lakeshore's Steve Walsh that will be simulcast on 89.1 FM. We're taking you to Indianapolis right now. There is the House chamber. The governor ought to be entering shortly. The governor will have some special guests escorting him this evening. Senator Patricia Miller is going to be one of those guests. Senator Jim Banks, Senator Lindell Hume, Lonnie Randolph, the senator from East Chicago, will be there as well. Also Representative Daniel Leonard, Representative Wendy McNamara, Representative Christina Hale, and Representative Craig Battles. Those are the people who will be escorting the governor as he makes his way towards the podium. We do have a sense of what the governor might discuss this evening in a very limited sort of way. Obviously, a State of the State speech tends to be a sort of hurrah, yay us, we've done a great job, and surely there will be some of that. We also expect him to talk about some topics that are germane to the governor and the state as we go forward, specifically education, jobs and the economy in Indiana, tax situation. There may be several other subjects he brings up as well. This governor was actually inaugurated just 1 year ago today. And of course, during his first legislative session, he has worked very hard to make a budget a big priority, a balanced budget, in fact, and he claims the largest tax cut in state history. You know, he's got a big job right now. Governor Mike Pence manages a state. The Indiana workforce is approximately 28,000 strong, and he has control of a state budget that is about $30.6 billion. Of course, prior to being elected governor, he represented Indiana's 6th congressional district, born and raised in Columbus, Indiana. I think we're going to send you out to the feed now as we're getting, we're there now, you can see, as we get things going here. Let you listen in a little bit to what's happening.
Speaker Bosma, President Pro Tem Long, Lieutenant Governor Ellspermann, Senator Lannon, Representative Pilath, distinguished members of the Indiana General Assembly, members of the judiciary, honored guests, my fellow Hoosiers, thank you for that warm welcome. After last week, warm is my favorite word. All kidding aside, I do want to take a moment to thank all of you in this chamber. I want to thank you and your families for the sacrifices that you make to be a part of the best state legislature in America. Thank you all. One year ago today, we started on a journey together. I've learned a great deal traveling all over our state over this past year, being with Hoosiers in good times and in bad. From hiking with kids in the Lincoln State Park to walking neighborhoods in Kokomo after the devastating tornadoes passed through that city. I've seen in those moments the character and spirit of our people firsthand. Hardworking, resilient, people of faith, and generous to those in need. And from all that I've seen, I can say on this night with conviction that the state of our state is strong and growing stronger because Hoosiers are the best people on earth. We have good government because we serve a great people. And nowhere was that more obvious than during last week's Arctic storm. There was heartbreak, of course, but it would have been a lot worse were it not for the efforts of our first responders, who, without regard to their health and safety, rescued countless Hoosiers, our highway crews, our utility workers, churches and charities who opened their doors to shelter those in need. So to our local police, fire, EMS, to the Indiana State Police and highway workers at the local and the state level, and to every Hoosier who reached out to a neighbor in time of need, the people of this state are in your debt, and so am I. And allow me to offer special appreciation tonight to one group that came alongside Hoosiers during that Arctic storm. Our citizen soldiers, who on short notice deployed in what were known as highway assistance teams. They worked with local first responders as well as our Indiana State Police. They rescued stranded motorists. They transported people to hospitals. They assisted local first responders in the midst of the storm. We're joined here tonight by several of those heroes who were part of those highway assistance teams. Sergeant First Class Maliki Dowdle from the 38th Infantry, Staff Sergeant Nick Lias of the 113th Operations Squadron, and Sergeant Mark Muley of the 2nd 150th Field Artillery. Thank you for your service abroad and at home. Every Hoosier is proud of our Indiana National Guard. You know, I think moments like this should be about the future, but it's also important that we see how far we've come in the last year together. Now, last year, I told you at this podium that we would make job creation job one, that we'd live within our means, that we'd improve our schools, and that we'd cut taxes. And thanks to the hardworking people of this state and all of you in this room, we did just what we said we would do. We balanced our budgets. We created jobs. We cut red tape, we improved our schools and our roads, and we paid down state debt. Heck, I even put the state plane up for sale. I mean, if you know anybody that's looking for a good deal on a Beechcraft King Air, give me a call. We did all of that, and we came together to give Hoosiers the largest state tax cut in Indiana history. That's a record of accomplishment of which we can all be proud. The result? Indiana's become a national leader in job growth. Last year, Hoosiers created more than 47,500 new private sector jobs, and we maintained our AAA credit rating, one of the few states in the union to do that. And in November, 1 out of 8 jobs created in the United States of America was created by businesses right here in Indiana. That is an extraordinary accomplishment for our people. Unemployment was 8.6% when I stood here last year. And while it's still too high today, at 7.3%, unemployment in Indiana now is at a 5-year low. And since 2009, Indiana has the 5th fastest private sector job growth in the United States of America. Indiana's on the move because of the people of Indiana. And let me say, most encouraging to this dad, Indiana's 4th and 8th graders recently showed the 2nd best improvement in America in math and reading scores, and 4th grade reading proficiency is at an all-time high. That's an accomplishment we can all be proud of. So we've made progress in jobs and schools, but with still too many Hoosiers out of work, with our state lagging behind in per capita income and health, and too many kids in underperforming schools, I believe we must remain relentless, bold, and ambitious to keep our state moving forward. That's why last month I traveled throughout the state, from Fort Wayne to our old state capitol in Corridor, and I outlined my agenda for 2014. And in the time we have remaining, I want to share a few highlights with all of you tonight. First, we all recognize that low taxes are essential to attracting the kind of investment that will create good-paying jobs. And even with our recent progress, I believe that one significant impediment to business investment remains. It's called the business personal property tax. Now, this tax is especially damaging because it's harder for Hoosier businesses to grow because it ultimately directly taxes investments that they make in equipment. Now, let me say emphatically, taxing equipment and technology in a state that leads the nation in making and creating things just doesn't make sense. And it looks like our neighboring states have figured it out. Ohio and Illinois don't have a business personal property tax, and Michigan lawmakers just voted to phase theirs out. To make Indiana more competitive, I want to urge all the members of both chambers. Let's work together to find a responsible way to phase out the business personal property tax. But one word of caution. As we work through this process, let's make sure we do it in a way that protects our local governments and doesn't shift the burden of this business tax onto the backs of hardworking Hoosiers. Now, I appreciate that both the House and the Senate leadership are looking at the business personal property tax and other ways to ensure that Indiana has the best tax climate possible. But phasing out the business personal property tax, I believe, will spur new investment by businesses large and small. Businesses like Coas Technology, an advanced manufacturing startup in Anderson, Indiana, launched by a Marine veteran whose products help support our troops. Or larger businesses like Amatrol in Jeffersonville, started back in 1964 by Don and Roberta Perkins to manufacture technical training systems and software for colleges and industry. Today, Amatrol employs 143 Hoosiers, and in 2010, it was named the Indiana Outstanding Business of the Year. These are just two of the kind of success stories we can see more of in Indiana with the right kind of tax reform. And since I mentioned both of them, why don't you join me in welcoming those two great Indiana business stories, Nate Richardson of Coas Technology and Paul Perkins of Amatrol, who are with us tonight in the People's House. Thanks for making Indiana the state that works. But we have to do more than just improve our tax code to get this economy moving again. Because roads mean jobs, we need to release $400 million for the next era of highway expansion and put Hoosiers back to work, keeping us as the crossroads of America. And because Indiana is agriculture, we need a permanent fix to the soil productivity factor. And because Indiana's regional cities are vital to our state's economic development, we need to encourage public and private investment to improve the quality of life in our cities. That's the Indiana way to a growing future, in the city and on the farm. And that way also means standing up to Washington, D.C. from time to time. Now, most Hoosiers didn't like Washington intruding on our health care long before it became a reality. Now more people than ever know why we were right to stand up to the federal government on the Affordable Care Act. There's been a lot of talk these days, though, about Medicaid. The sad truth is that traditional Medicaid is not just broke, it's broken. Research shows that the program actually doesn't lead to better health outcomes, and in some cases, believe it or not, it actually hurts the very people it's supposed to help. One analysis found 2/3 of children on Medicaid who needed to see a specialist actually couldn't in that program. Traditional Medicaid is not a system we need to expand, it's a system we need to change. And I believe the Healthy Indiana Plan is a great place to start. The Healthy Indiana Plan is a consumer-driven health care plan that moves people from emergency rooms to primary care and encourages low-income Hoosiers to take more ownership of their own health care decisions. But let me be clear on this point. We will continue to work in good faith with federal officials to expand access to the Healthy Indiana Plan in our state. But I will oppose any expansion of our health insurance system that condemns vulnerable Hoosiers to substandard health care or threatens the fiscal health of our state. Of course, the most important aspect for achieving Indiana's long-term success is all about our kids. It's about our schools. If we can't succeed in the classroom, we won't succeed in the marketplace. The great news is, to all those gathered here and my fellow Hoosiers looking on, Indiana schools are succeeding. This year, more than 500 public schools improved a full letter grade or more. With nearly 20,000 choice scholarships currently in use, Indiana has the fastest growing school choice program in the country. And with strong bipartisan support from both chambers last year, we're busy all over this state working to make career and vocational education a priority in every high school in Indiana again. We've made great progress in our schools. And working together, we've accomplished a lot. On career education, we're expanding curriculum in our high schools and developing new partnerships with local businesses to support regional career education. Now, while anyone who wants to go to college, regardless of where they start in life, ought to be encouraged to go, we all know there's a lot of good jobs in Indiana that don't require a college degree. These new partnerships through our regional works councils operating all over the state of Indiana will make sure that our schools work for all of our kids, regardless of where they start in life and regardless of where they want to start in life. To ensure we succeed in this effort, I'm proposing legislation that will conduct an in-depth assessment of how our career and technical education dollars are spent. And let's also make sure that adults who have a high school degree get the skills they need to get back on their feet by repurposing current job training dollars to help adult workers get the high-wage, high-demand jobs that are available in Indiana today. You know, Hoosiers have high expectations when it comes to our schools. That's why Indiana decided to take a time out on national education standards. When it comes to setting standards for our schools, let me be clear. Indiana's standards will be uncommonly high, and they will be written by Hoosiers, for Hoosiers, and be among the best in the nation. That progress that I just described earlier is a testament to our kids, to our parents, to our teachers, to our administrators, and it's a testament to the Indiana State Board of Education. Join me in thanking every member of the Indiana State Board of Education and Superintendent Glenda Ritz, who are here with us tonight. We appreciate your service for the people of Indiana. You know, I've always said there's nothing that ails education in Indiana that can't be fixed by giving parents more choices and teachers more freedom to teach. To continue to give parents more choices, I believe we can start in the area of early childhood development. Because every child deserves to start school ready to learn, I believe the time has come for a voluntary pre-K program to help Indiana's disadvantaged kids. Now, I'll always believe the best pre-K program is a prosperous family that's able to provide the kind of enrichment in the home that every child needs and deserves. But the reality is that's just not the case for too many Indiana children. Now, it's important that this program be voluntary. It's important that this program be available in the form of a voucher as well. I want parents to be able to choose to send their child to a church-based program, a private program, or a public pre-K program that they think would best meet their needs. But I urge all of you in this session of the General Assembly, let's come together. Let's work across party lines. On behalf of our children and their future, let's open the doors of opportunity to low-income families for quality pre-K education in Indiana this year. Another way to give parents more choices is to expand the availability of public charter schools. Even though they're charter schools, charters operate actually with several disadvantages. We need to level the playing field and allow charter schools to manage their budgets with the same flexibility as traditional public schools. At the same time, in the interest of greater choices for families, we should make sure that unused or underutilized public school buildings can be put to use by charters and other schools that need them. Now, choice matters, but at the end of the day, every Hoosier knows a good teacher makes all the difference. You know, we can all think of a teacher who changed our lives, someone who's on our mind right now, someone who saw more in us than we saw in ourselves. I think of Sister Rachel. I think of Mrs. Fisher and others who touched my life. But too often we don't invest enough in our teachers and allow them to lead as reformers. After all, they've dedicated their lives to education. And I believe we should do more to unleash their creativity and expertise. That's why I believe we need a teacher innovation fund to help teachers who are willing to try new ways to teach our kids. Innovative teachers like Steve Perkins, a Latin teacher from North Central High School in Indianapolis, whose enthusiasm has ignited a passion for classical education in that school. And it got him named the 2014 Teacher of the Year. Mr. Perkins and his family are here with us tonight. And with all the talk about parental choice, I believe teachers deserve more choices too. I think that any public school teacher who feels called to serve in a low-performing school should have some of their compensation protected if they're willing to make that move. Let's let our teachers follow their hearts and go where they think they can make the most difference. Now, on the subject of marriage, I know we're in the midst of a debate over whether Indiana should join some 30 other states that have enshrined the definition of marriage in our state constitution. Each of us has our own perspective on this matter. For my part, I believe in traditional marriage. And I've long held the view that the people, rather than unelected judges, should decide matters of such great consequence in our society. Now, reasonable people can differ. And there are good people on both sides of this debate. So let me say from my heart, no one on either side of this debate deserves to be disparaged or maligned because of who they are or what they believe. Let's have a debate worthy of our people with civility and respect. Let's protect the rights of Hoosier employers to hire who they want and provide them with the benefits that they deserve. And then let's resolve this issue this year, once and for all. And after that's over, let's come together to support every Hoosier family. One way we can do that is by helping working families with their family budget. Did you know that our tax deductions for dependents in Indiana have not increased since 1978, even though the cost of living has increased 3.6 times? I think it's time to index the personal and dependent exemptions to inflation to end this hidden tax on working families in Indiana. And let's also remember that families come together in many different ways, like the family of Karen Sauer. Karen's a single mom who felt called to become a parent by adoption. She adopted her 2 kids, Nevin and Dustin, when they were 11 and 12 years old after they'd spent many years in foster care. Karen says people are always telling her that she's changing those kids' lives. She's always quick to say, they're changing mine. Would you join me in welcoming a great Indiana family to the People's House tonight? Karen and the kids, you're an inspiration to us all. Adoption is a beautiful way for families to come together forever, and we can better support families like Karen's by expanding and improving adoption in Indiana. We can improve the way we place children from state care into adoptive homes, and we can support every parent who's willing to lovingly adopt a child into their home. I think we should make it our aim to do nothing less than to make Indiana the most pro-adoption state in the United States of America. So, Indiana is strong and growing stronger every day, but we still have work to do. And we will only achieve our full potential by working together, like Hoosiers always do when it matters most. Like on a warm summer day last July, 2 boys were walking on the dunes along Lake Michigan. And suddenly, one of the boys just disappeared. 6-year-old Nathan Weisner simply vanished into the sand. His dad ran to the scene, marshaling help even while frantically digging for his son. Michigan City police and fire raced to the dunes and were joined by beachgoers who were using their bare hands and shovels to dig at the sand. Local businesses showed up, rushing machinery to help clear away the sand. Even reporters covering the story were seen using their own notepads to dig for the boy. For nearly 3 hours, not one of those Hoosiers gave up. 140 people, until a firefighter felt a hand beneath the sand and pulled little Nathan to safety. They called it the miracle on Mount Baldy. And when I called Nathan's dad at the hospital to see how he was, I told him they were calling it that. And Greg told me, Governor, this wasn't our miracle. This was everyone's miracle. And he was right. And that's the Indiana way. We are a strong and good people, but we are never stronger than when we work together. So let me say as I close, as I said a year ago at this very podium, together we will build a more prosperous future. Together we will open doors of educational opportunity for all of our kids, and together, and only together, we will approach our 3rd century with confidence, with faith in Him who has ever guided this 19th star, and with boundless faith in all who go by the name Hoosier. I know the best is yet to come. Thank you. God bless you, and God bless the great state of Indiana.
You have been watching watching the 2014 State of the State speech live from Indianapolis, delivered by Indiana Governor Mike Pence. We're continuing our coverage of the governor's State of the State speech with a roundtable discussion hosted by the Lakeshore's Steve Walsh. He will be joined by a number of current and former Northwest Indiana political heavyweights to discuss the governor's remarks. Steve's in-studio guest tonight, former State Representative Chet Dobas, former Gary City Councilwoman Reagan Hatcher, and Indiana University Northwest Associate Professor of Political Science Marie Eisenstein.
Just a week ago for their short session. We're going to reach out to some of those lawmakers in Indianapolis in the next few minutes. But first, I want to introduce my panel here in the studio. We have former Representative Chet Dobas. We also have a former Gary City Councilwoman and mayoral candidate Reagan Hatcher. And then next to her, we have Indiana University Northwest Associate Professor of Political Science Marie Eisenstein. Welcome to everybody here.
Thanks for having us.
All right, so the governor, he set out a half an hour for his speech. We came up pretty much right on time. What do we think? Any surprises here? Let's start with Chet.
Surprises?
Surprises.
Not necessarily. It was pretty vanilla as far as I'm concerned. He throws some ideas out there but no solutions. Throws it right into the lap of the legislature. Let them come up with the solutions. And he knows, or maybe he's forgotten, that there are three separate but equal branches of government in Indiana. He can come up with some ideas, but Mitch Daniels would come up with solutions.
All right, he's got solutions. He wants a voucher program for pre-K. He wants a business personal property eliminated. Those are some big ideas, don't you think?
I'll give you the Republican line. How do you pay for it?
How do you pay for it?
That's the Republican line on everything in Washington or Indiana. How do you pay for it? Great idea. Let's come up with a solution on dollars.
All right. Marie Eisenstein, this is the governor's chance. This is really his big shot at the bully pulpit for the entire year here. How do you think he did?
I would, in all honesty, say it was a little underwhelming. And so I would agree with Chet that it was a little bit of a, vanilla milquetoast. I agree that those are good ideas in terms of the personal property tax or the pre-K education, but it wasn't, there was no particular solution advanced in terms of how you pay for it, which is a big issue. I mean, this is the big issue. How do you pay for it?
You have a $2 billion surplus in Indiana. There's money everywhere for these things if you want to access that money, correct?
If you want to access it, but I don't necessarily think that just relying on the surplus is a good idea. What you really want to do is put into place policies that would make these programs revenue neutral.
All right, so they're going to have to find a way, if they want this business personal property tax, because they're going to have to find a way somehow to pay for it. And the way this works, and Chet knows this better than anybody, this is not a budget year. The budget was passed last year. It's a two-year budget. This is the so-called short session. So if they want to do this, they're going to have to reopen the budget. Sometimes lawmakers are a little reluctant to do that. Reagan Hatcher, this is the second time this governor, the first year he was just fresh in office, taking over for Mitch Daniels. He's now had a year in office. What did you think of the speech?
Well, actually, I was looking at the speech that he gave last year, and it sounded very similar. A lot of the same ideas came up last year, and it was really funny because after that speech, they said, hey, you've thrown out these ideas. Where are your solutions? And he basically said to the reporter that, it's his job to come up with the ideas and then let the people figure out how to pay for it or what the solution or how to bring it to fruition. So I think that's what he's doing here again, and it looks like he has some big ideas. Not sure if they're going to move forward this year or not. They didn't move forward last year, so we'll see where they go.
Well, I mean, it's not like nothing happened last year. He did get part of his he wanted a 10% cut in the personal income tax. He at least got a portion of that.
Well, he did get 5% of that, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how that fleshes out for the average middle-class citizen. Will we actually see a reduction of 5% in property taxes, or will it kind of be hidden in the numbers for the Indiana 1040 form?
All right, so there were some ideas that were advanced here, were there not? I heard references to House Joint Resolution 3. This is the resolution that would ban same-sex marriage in the Indiana Constitution, create that voter referendum. The governor has not been real vocal on that issue lately. He did mention that in the speech. Marie, is that significant in your mind?
that he mentioned it in the speech or the issue itself?
Take that any way you want to take it.
I think it is. I mean, this is, whether one agrees with same-sex marriage or disagrees with it, seems to be the social issue of the moment, and it's going to remain so. It's like the social issue of our time. And as we were watching this speech, my esteemed panelist, you had mentioned that, what does government have to do with marriage? Like, why are they in the business of marriage? And as a social scientist, I think that the thing that gets left out of this debate all the time is why indeed is government involved in the business of marriage? And historically, the only compelling state interest the government has in marriage is to take care of the next generation. This is the only reason government has ever been involved in marriage. It's all about making sure that you provide a stable family and environment for the children that might come into that marriage. So as technology and science has changed who can and cannot have children, this, has moved this issue along.
But do you think you and Mike Pence are on the same page? He didn't really come down very strongly. Now, he came down very strongly as a congressman on this whole issue of same-sex marriage. He did not come down really strongly. Do you think that represents a change in his position at all?
Oh, I doubt that he personally has changed his position. He's just moderating his position as a practical matter of governance.
And don't forget, Steve, when he was in Congress, for 10 years, he never passed a bill.
Okay.
He was a bomb thrower. He'd get up on these 1-minute speeches when the whole chamber was empty, speaking to, he thought, the country, and throw bombs. Never came up with a solution. He was one of the original Tea Partiers, quite frankly, and they kind of followed suit.
He was definitely a very vocal social conservative. But have we seen that so far in this first year as governor?
I don't think so. I don't think we've seen that very much at all. We know that he is a social conservative, but while the rest of the country is talking about same-sex marriage, that is exactly what I was saying. What interest does government have in worrying about who marries who when we have bigger issues? Our educational system, especially in Lake County, is almost to a point where it's broken, and we need significant help. The economics, the unemployment rate, the amount of jobs that are coming along. I mean, we have some real serious issues to make sure families can function, not to be worried about who marries who.
So everybody seems to be sort of on the same page in this, but it's not. Would you actually say that this issue is dead? Well, it seems to have a very, very large constituency, even now.
Look at what's happened with the base of the governor's, financial base of the governor's party. The Chamber of Commerce, the universities, all of the big employers in the state have gone against him on this issue. Maybe it's time, if you don't mind me throwing this out,
do it.
This issue is going to come back over and over and over again until it's resolved. Maybe the thing we need to do is vote it up or down, get it on the ballot, and let the people of Indiana finally decide and either accept or reject the idea, because that's the way we change the Constitution.
You and the governor are on the same page. You and the governor are on the same page, are you?
I am not for attacking the Constitution. In the 42 years I was there, that only happened on a couple of occasions. That's serious business. There's already a law in the state of Indiana that bans same-sex marriage. Has been there since in the late 90s, I would think. And that's the force and effective law. But if they want to find out how the people feel about it, throw it on the ballot and give me a chance to vote.
Give you a chance to vote. So this issue clearly is not the vote getter it was a couple of years ago when this passed out of the General Assembly the first time around. There's obviously been a lot of change in there. But and right now, this issue is sitting there in the House Judiciary Committee. It's significant that the governor's talking about it now because they're looking at whether or not they can vote this resolution out of committee. It could literally die in a Republican-led committee. If that were to happen, what would be the significance, Marie Eisenstein?
Oh, this is... I think that we're seeing a shift away from... I think it really represents that the Republicans are becoming less vocal, at least in the state of Indiana, in terms of the ban on same-sex marriage. And so if it can't make it out of a Republican Indiana state house, then I'm not sure it could come up again.
Don't forget, they poll each individual district. And I know that there are some people who might be really vocal about this have been in the past, who are reassessing their situation. Republican legislators wondering, don't forget, they're up for re-election in May and November. That's on the line right now. This wasn't last year when they could willy-nilly do anything they want and people would forget it. These are campaign issues, and somebody's going to run against them.
We've got Senator Karen Talion on the line. Senator, welcome to the show.
Hi, Steve.
Hey, Senator, you were in the chamber for the speech. What did you think?
Well, I didn't think there were any surprises. I heard a lot of the same broad points that he has been talking about for the past couple of months. And as a matter of fact, Professor Dobus, hi, Chet. I heard you say that Governor Pence was previously known as a bomb thrower, and frankly, I think he's doing the same thing now. He keeps throwing out these very broad, let's have a tax cut. Let's get rid of personal property taxes. Let's, have an adoption program. But he's throwing all these things out without a plan. And we still haven't seen a plan. And it's very disconcerting because, frankly, from the view from down here, if it weren't sad, it would be funny. The governor sits downstairs throwing out these grand concepts without any detail. The Republican leaders on the third floor are pursuing their own agendas, two separate directions, trying to come up with something. And in the meantime, the rank-and-file Republican legislators are running around filing all kinds of bills that seem specifically designed to start fights.
Specifically designed to start fights. I mean,
right.
Eliminating business personal property tax. That's something that would unite most Republicans, both fiscal and social, would it not?
I don't think so.
No?
I mean, the Republicans also come from small towns. They come from places where they know that their local economies are going to be hurt. Local government right now, because of a whole number of Daniels Pence programs that we've seen over the last year, local governments are in really bad shape. They're really hurting fiscally. And I don't mean... Yeah.
Oh, and the idea of eliminating the business personal property tax, that takes some $1 billion out of schools all around the state. So you have to either find a way of replacing that revenue, or you're going to have to make do without that amount of money. Now, there is a plan. Well, I mean, correct?
Yeah, no, I don't know. Well, let me just say, I don't think that the $1 billion is coming out strictly out of schools. A lot of that personal property tax is directly funding our local governments, our local police and fire. A lot of that money is not coming to the state general fund. It's going to local government.
All right, so you heard the speech. What was missing in your mind?
That's what it means.
Oh, what was missing? Well, I think that was one of the big things is what the governor didn't talk about. He said Indiana's too poor and too unhealthy. Well, we know that. But he didn't mention the fact that there's been a decline in per capita income, making Indiana number 41 in the state. We're number 43 in the U.S. for people with undergraduate degrees.
Actually, I think he actually did mention the lagging personal per capita income in the state of Indiana. Now, I know one issue that he did bring up, and it's an issue that is near and dear to your heart. He talked about Medicaid, and now under the Affordable Care Act, you could expand Medicaid. The governor it looks like in that speech, he kind of dug in his heels and he said, we want to use the Healthy Indiana plan. He's got to meet with the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Kathleen Sebelius, in February to try to negotiate something. What do you think that discussion is going to look like?
Well, I have a hard time figuring that out myself. This is another one of those bombs that he's thrown. We're not doing this. We are doing HIP. But, he's been to the feds once with a HIP plan. and it was rejected.
And the HIP is the Healthy Indiana Plan. That's the state's own sort of a version of kind of Medicaid, though it has things like deductibles. It is much smaller.
And it has a cap.
Oh,
and
it's
it has a
way
cap
much smaller, and it was never meant to cover 400,000 uninsured people.
Marie Eisenstein.
Pardon?
No, all right. It was never meant to be as big as there. At least it certainly doesn't have funding to allow everybody and all of the uninsured in Indiana part of that program. Marie Eisenstein, when you look at that speech and you look at the references to sort of using the Healthy Indiana Plan, do you see a governor that's looking to cooperate, to cut a deal, to try to expand Medicaid, or a governor that's saying nope? They're going to have to come in my direction.
Oh, I think he clearly wants the feds to come in his direction. Look, this all goes back to the passing of the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, right, where it was done without a single Republican vote. And now you have these Republican governors, and while there are complaints saying, this is being disadvantaged or inhibited, this expansion of Medicaid by Republican governors, it's like, well, this is what happens when you do an epic battle based on just partisan lines and you don't get one single vote from the other party, when you're not going to get cooperation then in every other component down the road. So I don't think that this will be a move for him moving towards the feds at all.
So, I don't know, is there any hope, do you think, of a compromise, Senator Talion?
Well, let me say this. We have filed two bills. I've filed them, but they really are bills that represent the view of our entire caucus. One of them is, just say yes, just do it. But the other bill is a suggestion for a compromise. And it basically says, all right, look, some other states have come up with this plan. It's called premium assistance. And it means that we take the federal dollars and we use those dollars to buy a market-based insurance policy for these people. It gets the Republicans off of their "we don't like Medicaid" plan.
All right, so you're hoping that
not Medicaid.
Okay.
And it's a free market plan. Now, I really wish we had an Indiana exchange to go along with it. But this is a plan that's been approved in other states already, and we're offering that as a compromise.
I want to get to, and Senator, I thank you for being on. I want to get to Representative Rick Niemeyer. We got to get at least one Republican in here. Representative Niemeyer, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Steve.
So what did you think of the governor's speech?
Well, it was the same, that his first year, and it was the same jobs and education stuff that is going forward with, and taking Indiana into the future, hopefully.
And so, does that trouble you, or this is just steady as she goes, and this is just part of the way the governor does things?
Well, I don't think it's steady as you go. They're pretty aggressive plans with the tax cuts and the money we put back in Hoosiers' pockets last year. I think that's a big plus. I think things are going forward. Vocational education. And the emphasis on trying to find good jobs and jobs that are there to make sure we have the Hoosiers that are trained to take those jobs. And I think it was a good first year, and now the second year is going to be a continuance of that. And
are we seeing just a very different kind of governor from his predecessor, Mitch Daniels, even though they're both Republicans?
No, I think they're both very, very strong on family values, education, and creating. Making Indiana a golden star of the country right now, as far as trying to get businesses in here, get people to relocate here, make sure that people that are here stay here when they get their education, that we have jobs for them. I think that's the future of Indiana, and that's where I think the governor went last year, and that's where his plan is going for next year.
When you hear what the governor said about House Joint Resolution 3, the same-sex marriage amendment to the Constitution, where do you think we're headed with that? Where do you think this governor is headed with that?
Well, I think the lines are pretty well drawn, Steve. It's a very split decision on this. Everybody has their thoughts on it. It's either going to come forward or not out of the House and the Senate in the next week or 10 days. And then hopefully we go forward once we get that off the legislation agenda for this year, one way or the other. It's not a true-cut issue of where people are at. Everybody has their thoughts on this, and I just think that it should go on the ballot and let the people decide of what they want to do with this in the Constitution or not. I think it's that close of a question. When I talk to my people back home and my constituents, I get a sense that that's where it should go, and they should make the decision on this issue, because I can't get a clear-cut decision one way or the other to make a vote on myself to put it in or out, but I can make a vote to put it in on the ballot for them to decide.
I want to rate this governor's first year in office here. We've now got 1 year under his belt. I'll start with you, Rick Niemeyer, because you're the only official Republican here in the room. Rate the governor's first year.
I would rate the governor's as a very good year as far as making sure that Indiana has a balanced budget. We have our AAA rating. We created a lot of jobs. We looked at education and going forward with education reforms on some issues. So I think it was a really good start in the first year when the economy is starting to turn around in the nation. And I want to make sure that Indiana is one of the states that goes forward real fast.
All right. Let's go quickly around the table here. Chet Dobis, first, you're a former Democratic lawmaker, so let's put that in there.
I'm proud of that.
I'm not saying you shouldn't be. Rate the governor's first year.
Well, if you use the grading system that we use in our education system, I'd give him a C-. He wasn't a complete failure, but you have to understand from what I said earlier, this guy's got no experience in state government at all. Big difference between the federal government, where they pass bills, don't cross the I's and dot the T's. In Indiana, you have to cross the I's, dot the T's, and come up with a solution. Solutions last year didn't come from the governor's office. They came from the legislative branch of government.
You're a former legislator. That's a bad thing that they're coming out of the legislative branch, or we're seeing a power struggle?
Absolutely not, but it proves that he's, number one, like I said earlier, inexperienced, and I question his competence yet, but I give him the benefit. It was his first year.
All right.
And he let everybody go that had any experience in the administration. I think that's part of his failure.
There might be a learning curve there. Reagan Hatcher, his first year as governor. Compare him to Mitch Daniels.
Well, I almost want to give him like a neutral rating, but I'm going to go on the lower end of the neutral. I'm going to be in the D range because of a few things. The main one is that everything that he's done in this first year, or everything that he's pushed to do, has not helped lower income people. And I know he's talking, Indiana is strong and this and that, but they're right. We rank in the very low levels in the state of having bachelor's degrees and middle class. It's no good for the families in Indiana. It's definitely has not been good for the people in the city of Gary since Mike Pence has come in. And these things that he's talking about, killing the business tax. Well, where's that money that came from business tax? The few dollars that we were getting for our early start program. And I mean, heck, just to run the city of Gary and to run the school district. When those things are gone, then what do we do?
All right. So Maria Eisenstein, and we got to switch here because we're running a little bit out of time here. I'm going to actually throw in here. He made a shout out to Glenda Ritz, Superintendent of Public Instruction. Obviously, there have been a lot of issues between the governor, the Superintendent of Public Instruction, the school board. There a lot of infighting going on and not a lot going on. Do you think he was attempting to turn the page here at all? And do you think he did?
Oh, I don't know if he actually turned the page. I'm sure that he was trying to mend fences, if you will, or at least come across as being amenable to mending fences. I don't know that it will do anything. If for no other reason than even some of the Democrats on the State Board of Education is fighting with Glenda Ritz. So I'm not sure that he can by himself mend those fences.
She's a separately elected official,
right.
Democrat. He's a Republican.
Right.
He does appoint the board. He could have appointed different people, I suppose, had he wanted to. We have, and we're running out of time. I want to get him on. Representative Charlie Brown, who is now, used to be Chet Dobis. Now, Representative Charlie Brown is the head of the Northwest Indiana delegation. Representative Brown, welcome to the show. What did you think of the speech?
Thank you. Steve, did you say I used to be Chet Dobis?
No. Chet Dobis is here in the studio. And, yeah. Anyway. All right.
Yeah. Well, I did not get much from the statements made by the governor tonight. He pointed out in his agenda that he wants to still wants to move forward with removing the personal property tax on businesses, but then dumps it on us as to how we fill that hole that will leave there. I don't think the concept is much enamored by even members of his party about eliminating this tax at this point, especially when we have not come up with a means of replacing that tax. He concentrated a lot on education tonight, but still there wasn't much there, even in the case of the early childhood education, where he's talking about allowing parents to use vouchers and go anywhere, even to church schools. But yet, still, I haven't heard anything about where is this money going to come from. We're going to expand early childhood, which is wonderful. All of us support expanding early childhood education.
I was going to ask, does he get some marks for the notion that he is asking to right now, Indiana spends nothing on pre-K education here.
Right.
And it's one of the few states that don't spend any money. So the fact that he wants to get in the game, does that make a difference?
Yeah, it certainly does. But I haven't heard anything about fiscal matters. You know, we hear a lot about this $2 billion in the rainy day fund. Didn't mention that at all about whether we need to borrow or take some of that money from the rainy day fund to fund some of these programs. It's amazing how he glosses over the uninsured issue, which is a big issue with me in terms of we have 4,000 folks that currently are eligible for Medicaid. But yet he keeps talking about it's a broken system and we need to change it. Well, we can't change it at the local level. That's when he was in Congress that he should have been pushing to change it. But the real scary thing is that once more, obviously, he plans to approach Secretary Sebelius about giving Indiana some kind of another waiver after this one-year waiver is up that we are using the HIP program.
Real briefly, because we're coming right up to the end, and we talked a little bit about that with Senator Talian. Anything for Northwest Indiana that you saw in that speech tonight?
No.
I mean, there certainly was nothing in particular, but is there something that this area really needs that you heard from that governor?
No, he talked about that we have reduced the unemployment, but that's still a big issue up in the region, and I haven't heard anything about how we continue to reduce that, and especially in that area. And he spends a lot of time talking about job creation, but I don't see that. There seems to be a contradiction in talking about that's his number one priority, job creation, and yet we still have this big percentage of unemployment in the state, and especially in the region.
All right, so that's where we're going to have to leave it. That's Representative Charlie Brown. We're going to leave our coverage for right now. This has been our live coverage of Indiana Governor Mike Pence's second State of the State address. I want to thank my guests here in the studio, State Representative Chet Dobis and Gary City Councilwoman, former Gary City Councilwoman Reagan Hatcher, and Indiana University Northwest Professor Marie Eisenstein. Well, thank you, all of you, for being on.
Thank you for
having
having
us.
We want to thank you for joining us for our live coverage and discussion of Governor Mike Pence's 2014 State of the State speech. If you'd like to continue to follow our roundtable discussion, you can do so by turning on your radio and going to the Lakeshore 89.1 FM. We will have additional coverage of the governor's State of the State speech and reaction to it on Lakeshore News tonight at 10. I'm Kristen Estes. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. Again, we want to thank you. You've been watching the governor's 2014 State of the State address. We will have additional coverage for you a little bit later on tonight during the 10 o'clock broadcast, Lakeshore News tonight at 10. Have a good evening.